First contact at midnight. The desert wind howled across the empty parking lot of the Starlight Research Complex, carrying dust and tumbleweeds past James Walsh's security booth. At 2 a.m., the facility was eerily quiet except for the distant hum of backup generators and the occasional ping of cooling metal in the spring night. James adjusted his collar and sipped lukewarm coffee, fighting the monotony of another graveyard shift. After 15 years of military service and now 5 years as head of night security, he thought he'd seen everything. The coffee cup nearly slipped from his fingers when the perimeter alarm chirped, silent mode, Sector 7, near the old observatory. Motion in Sector 7, he muttered, pulling up the thermal cameras. The screen showed something odd, a heat signature unlike anything he'd seen before, moving with an unnatural fluidity. It wasn't human-shaped, nor was it any desert wildlife he recognized. Grabbing his flashlight and sidearm, James radioed dispatch. Walsh here. Investigating Sector 7. Probably another coyote. He didn't mention the strange thermal reading. No need to sound crazy just yet. The path to the observatory was lined with drought-resistant plants, their shadows dancing in his flashlight beam. The motion sensor light flickered on, revealing nothing immediate, but James heard it, a soft, crystalline sound, like wind chimes in a vacuum. Behind the observatory's dome, something moved. James raised his flashlight, revealing a sight that made him question his sanity. The being was tall, easily 7 feet, with skin that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. Its form was vaguely humanoid but moved like liquid mercury. When it turned to face him, James saw not eyes but spiral patterns of bioluminescence that pulsed with intelligence. The creature clutched its side, where a dark substance leaked onto the ground. It was injured. "Dear God," James whispered, lowering his flashlight slightly. The being made no aggressive moves. Instead, it raised one hand in what appeared to be a universal gesture of peace. A voice emerged, not from the creature but seemingly from the air around them, like harmonics from a crystal glass. "Sanctuary, please, they follow." James had made split-second decisions in combat zones that saved lives. This felt similar, that moment when training and humanity intersect. The being was clearly injured, clearly intelligent, and clearly asking for help. "Okay," he said softly, holstering his weapon. "Okay. But we need to move fast. Can you walk?" The creature took a stumbling step forward, its luminescent patterns dimming. James moved to support it, finding its surface cool and smooth like polished marble. Together they made their way to the facility's medical bay, a risk, but one James felt compelled to take. Inside, under harsh fluorescent lights, the being's true appearance became clearer. Its skin was a matrix of interconnected crystalline structures that shifted and flowed like liquid glass. The injury was a crack in this matrix, leaking what looked like liquid light. "I'm James," he said, gathering medical supplies. "Can you understand me?" The being touched what appeared to be a device at its throat. Translation: damaged. But functional. "I am." The sound that followed was like a symphony compressed into a single note. "Maybe I'll just call you Crystal for now," James suggested, examining the wound. "What happened to you?" Crystal's patterns shifted, displaying what looked like star charts in its skin. "Pursued. Across light years. Because I carry truth. Truth that would end war." James began cleaning the wound with saline solution, noticing how the crystalline edges seemed to respond positively to the mineral content. "Who's pursuing you?" "The purifiers," Crystal replied, patterns darkening. "They believe in one truth, one form, one way. My people, we are different. We adapt. Change. They say we contaminate the purity of space." James had heard similar rhetoric before, in other conflicts, on a much smaller scale. "Fascists are fascists, even across the galaxy, huh?" Crystal's patterns rippled in what might have been agreement. They follow. Will trace quantum signature. Must. The medical bay's lights flickered, and a low hum began to build. Crystal's patterns flared in alarm. They come. James quickly gathered supplies into a bag. Then we'd better not be here when they arrive. I know somewhere safe, but you'll have to trust me. Crystal rose unsteadily. Why help? Your world knows nothing of our conflict. James smiled grimly, leading them toward the emergency exit. Maybe not. But I know enough about right and wrong. And sometimes, that's all you need to know. As they slipped into the desert night, the hum grew louder, and the first lights of pursuit craft began to appear in the sky above the facility. James knew his life had just become infinitely more complicated, but looking at the wounded being beside him, he also knew he'd made the right choice. The universal language of compassion. The desert night concealed their escape as James guided Crystal through back roads in his old pickup truck. The cab's interior sparkled with reflected light from Crystal's shifting patterns, casting prismatic shadows on the worn dashboard. My sister Hannah has a place off the grid, James explained, taking another unmarked turn. She's a geologist, lives out by the mineral springs. If anyone can help understand your biology, it's her. Crystal's patterns pulsed weakly. The makeshift bandages James had applied were already soaked through with luminescent fluid. Your knowledge of crystalline structures may help. My form requires specific mineral compositions to heal. The sound of helicopters echoed in the distance. James glanced in his rearview mirror, seeing searchlights sweeping the desert floor. Government's gotten involved faster than I expected. Guess a quantum disturbance isn't something they can ignore. They arrived at a small house nestled against red rock formations. Hannah Walsh stood in the doorway, her gray hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing a faded bathrobe. Her eyes widened at the sight of Crystal but showed no fear. When you said emergency, I expected a lost hiker, she said dryly. This is considerably more interesting. Inside, Hannah's living room looked more like a geology lab, with rock samples and equipment scattered everywhere. Crystal's patterns brightened at the sight of the minerals, particularly drawn to a collection of quartz specimens. Fascinating, Hannah murmured, examining Crystal's wound. The crystalline matrix appears to be a living lattice structure. These formations here. She gestured to the damaged area. They're trying to rebuild, but lacking proper materials. James kept watch at the window. Can you help? Hannah was already gathering specimens. Their biological structure seems to incorporate mineral compounds. If we can identify the right combination. She placed several crystals near the wound. Crystal's patterns immediately responded, reaching out like liquid crystal toward a particular purple-hued specimen. Fluorite, Hannah breathed. Of course. The cubic crystal system would be compatible with your matrix structure, wouldn't it? Crystal's translator hummed. Yes. Also requires trace elements. Rare earth minerals. Hannah's eyes lit up. I have samples from the springs. They're rich in rare earth deposits. James, help me with the equipment. As they worked through the night, Crystal's wound slowly began to heal, the crystal matrix rebuilding itself using materials Hannah provided. The helicopters passed overhead several times but never stopped, the house's location too remote to draw attention. Dawn was breaking when Hannah made another discovery. These patterns, she pointed to Crystal's shifting surface, they're not just beautiful, they're information. You're a living data storage system, aren't you? Crystal's patterns formed complex geometric shapes. I am, what your people might call, a librarian. A keeper of histories. The purifiers, they wish to erase all histories but their own. James understood. That's why they're hunting you. You're proof that their pure history is a lie. All histories matter, Crystal's translator resonated. All forms of life have right to exist. To change. To grow. Suddenly, Crystal's patterns flared in alarm. A high-pitched whine filled the air, and the house's windows began to vibrate. They've traced the quantum signature, Crystal's translator crackled. I have brought danger to your home. I am sorry. Underground sanctuary. The decision to leave Hannah's house came just in time. As they drove away in James's truck, a beam of intense light struck where they'd been moments before, leaving a perfectly circular hole in the ground. Those purifiers don't mess around, James muttered, taking evasive maneuvers down winding desert roads. Hannah sat in the middle, clutching her bag of mineral samples, while Crystal's patterns swirled with anxiety. Need network, Crystal's translator hummed. Others like me, hidden on Earth. Ancient protocol, sanctuary network. Hannah looked up from her samples. Are you saying there are more of your kind here? Not my kind, but others. Refugees. Hidden among stars. Earth, designated sanctuary world. Humans, known for helping. James couldn't help but laugh. We're known for helping. Have you seen our history? Crystal's patterns formed what looked like a smile. Seen all histories. Humans, capable of great darkness, yes. But also, greatest capacity for change. For acceptance. For fighting tyranny. The conversation was interrupted by a roadblock ahead, government vehicles and men in dark suits. James veered off onto a side road, but more vehicles appeared behind them. We need a plan, Hannah said, watching the pursuit in the side mirror. I have a colleague, Dr. Patel. She runs the geology department at the university. The old mine system under the campus might provide enough mineral interference to mask Crystal's quantum signature, James finished. And the tunnels connect to the old subway system. Hannah, you're brilliant. They managed to lose their pursuers in a series of complicated turns, eventually arriving at the university's Earth Sciences building. Dr. Priya Patel was waiting at a service entrance, her dark eyes taking in the situation with remarkable calm. When Hannah said she needed access to the mines for an unusual specimen study, I assumed she meant rocks, Dr. Patel said, leading them through dimly lit corridors. This is considerably more exciting. The mine system was a maze of tunnels dating back to the 1800s, now used for geology research. Crystal's patterns brightened in the mineral-rich environment, the wounds from earlier almost completely healed. These tunnels, Crystal's translator hummed, touching the walls. They sing with history. With stories of human persistence. Of hope. Dr. Patel led them to a large cavity that had been converted into a research area. This chamber is electromagnetically shielded for sensitive equipment. It should help mask any quantum signatures. As they settled in, Crystal began to share more about the sanctuary network. Throughout history, various alien species had found refuge on Earth, hidden among humans who chose to help rather than fear the unknown. Your media shows aliens as invaders, Crystal's patterns rippled with amusement. Reality, more often refugees. Seeking shelter from oppression. Finding kindness in unexpected places. Hannah was examining Crystal's fully healed crystal matrix. The mineral composition here is perfect for your biological needs. These tunnels could serve as a long-term sanctuary while we figure out how to deal with the purifiers. Not just sanctuary, Crystal's translator hummed. Communication hub. Can contact others, coordinate resistance. Earth's mineral wealth, perfect for our kind. James watched the entrance while Dr. Patel set up monitoring equipment. So Earth isn't just a hiding place. It could be a base of operations against these space fascists. Crystal's patterns formed complex geometric shapes that seemed to represent star systems. Purifiers fear Earth, not for resources, but for ideas. Freedom. Diversity. Change. Most dangerous weapons, in universe. As if to emphasize the point, distant explosions echoed through the tunnels. The purifiers were getting closer, but now they had a plan, a network, and most importantly, hope. Breaking the code. Deep in the university's mind system, Dr. Patel's research lab had become an unlikely command center. Monitors displayed thermal readings of purifier ships in orbit, while Hannah analyzed mineral samples that could help strengthen their defenses. Their quantum tracking technology has limitations. Crystal's translator hummed while patterns danced across their surface. Earth's mineral diversity creates interference. But they will adapt. James studied the orbital tracking data. They're establishing a search grid. Military precision. We need to understand what we're up against. Crystal's patterns shifted to display complex sequences that Dr. Patel rushed to record. Purifiers began as peaceful species. Believed in preservation, but preservation became stagnation. Stagnation became control. Now seek to purify galaxy of all change. Like a cosmic immune system gone wrong, Hannah mused, attacking anything different as a threat. Crystal moved to a wall covered in mineral deposits, their patterns interacting with the crystals. Suddenly, the entire chamber filled with holographic star charts, showing the spread of purifier influence across thousands of systems. I carry histories of resistance, Crystal explained. Records of species who fought back. Who survived. Who adapted. This knowledge threatens their control. Shows another way possible. Dr. Patel's equipment began picking up new signals. More ships entering orbit. They're not even trying to hide anymore. James noticed Crystal's patterns forming what he now recognized as computational sequences. You're not just storing these histories, are you? You're running calculations. Planning something. Earth's mineral networks, perfect resonance frequency, Crystal confirmed. With right amplitude, could broadcast histories to all purifier ships. Show their crews truth of their own past. Their own changes. Hannah looked up from her work. You want to use Earth's crystal deposits like a giant transmission array? That would require enormous energy. And paint a target right on our planet, James added. Crystal's patterns dimmed. Choice must be yours. Earth already target. Question is, fight with truth or wait for destruction? Before they could discuss further, the tunnel's security sensors blared. Armed figures in sleek environmental suits were advancing through multiple tunnels. The purifiers had found them. Bridges across the stars. The confrontation in the mines became a desperate race against time. James and Dr. Patel sealed tunnel entrances while Hannah worked with Crystal to align the mineral deposits for transmission. Multiple breaches. James called out as the first purifier units broke through. Their weapons fired beams that crystallized everything they touched. Crystal's patterns flared. They seek to purify matter itself. Return all to original crystalline state. Perfect. Unchanging. Dead. The chamber's natural crystal formations began resonating as Crystal interfaced with them, preparing for the transmission. Hannah calibrated frequencies while Dr. Patel rerouted power from the university's grid. We'll only get one chance at this, Hannah shouted over the growing resonance. The power surge will burn out everything. The first purifier breached the chamber, a towering figure encased in living crystal armor. Its voice resonated through the air, surrender the archival unit. Its corruption must be contained. Crystal's patterns pulsed defiantly. I am not corruption. I am memory. I am change. I am truth. They turned to James. Ready? James looked at the humans who had chosen to stand with an alien refugee, his sister, a brilliant geologist, Dr. Patel, who risked her career and life, himself, a security guard who chose compassion over protocol. Do it. Crystals' patterns exploded with light as they connected with the chamber's mineral network. The purifier staggered as its own crystalline armor began resonating. Through its transparent faceplate, they could see the being inside watching in awe as images played across every crystal surface, histories of their own people's evolution, their changes, their growth. More purifiers entered, but each froze as the histories reached them. Crystal's voice grew stronger. See truth. You were never pure. You were explorers. Innovators. Changemakers. Fear made you forget. Fear made you hate change in others. The resonance built to a crescendo. Through Dr. Patel's monitors, they could see the effect reaching the ships in orbit, each vessel's crystalline technology becoming part of the transmission network. The lead purifier's armor began to crack, not from damage but from transformation. We, remember, it said, its voice losing its mechanical edge. We were, more than this. The energy surge finally overwhelmed the systems, plunging the chamber into darkness. When emergency lights came on, the purifiers had changed. Their rigid crystal armor had become flowing, adaptive, alive. The purification protocol has been corrupted, the lead purifier announced. No. Not corrupted. Healed. We remember now. Change is not enemy. Change is life. In the days that followed, the transformation rippled across the purifier fleet. The invasion became a first contact situation, then a cultural exchange. Crystal's histories became a bridge between species, and Earth's status as a sanctuary world was officially recognized. James found Crystal at the observatory where they first met, their patterns reflecting the starlight. Will you stay? He asked. Earth's crystals sing with stories, they replied. More stories every day. Someone must archive them. Someone must remember. Above them, ships from a dozen species entered orbit, not to invade, but to learn, to trade, to grow. Earth had become not just a sanctuary, but a symbol of something the galaxy desperately needed, proof that change, however frightening, held the seeds of hope. The desert wind still blew across the Starlight Research Complex, but now it carried voices from the stars, telling stories of worlds where difference wasn't just tolerated, but celebrated. And in a crystal chamber deep beneath the earth, histories of 1,000 worlds glowed with the promise of tomorrow.